you could have the best product in the world, but if you can't capture that essence in 30 seconds, good luck.
You can create really compelling ads on your iPhone. You just have to understand the mindset behind like how to create it and what you want to do.
Some of the ads that were winning were not what I would have picked in the initial run.
What's up, guys? So I am here with Emerson, and today we are going to talk about something that's very important that everybody needs to do well, and the ones who are doing well at it need to get better, which is how to create high-performing ads that actually work.
Yeah, it seems like the most obvious thing to everyone about what you need to have, but you'd be surprised at how many elements and sort of strategies and different types of ads work for different types of businesses. So excited to dive into this one.
Well, and it's funny too, because how many times have you seen we've onboarded a new client, they're spending, a significant amount of money, but they're running the same ads that they've been running for 8 months, 9 months. They're not testing a whole lot of different things. And they spent so much time in the platform trying to figure out what's happening in the platform, but they're not making any adjustments to one of the key variables that determines whether the campaign is going to be profitable or not.
Yeah, I think there's an idea sometimes that if you have like a good product and you have an audience, like that's all it takes. But there's layers of education and building the funnel and, driving traffic and hooking them and all that sort of stuff that goes into crafting ads that sometimes, clients, when they come to us, haven't realized, because they're sort of going, we just love our product, and you could have the best product in the world, but if you can't capture that essence in 30 seconds,
that attention,
good luck.
And so, at the risk of sounding like Captain Obvious here, I'm gonna talk through a little. And if you're listening or watching, don't roll your eyes, but I'm gonna talk through why quality ads, high performing ads, are so important, right? Like, one, the current state of Meta. After iOS 14, targeting is just not nearly as good as it was before, which means, in essence, your ad does a lot of that heavy lifting, right? You are leaning on the pixel, so the pixel is optimizing towards where the performance is coming from. The better the ad, the more people who that ad is relevant for take action and engagement with that ad, which means it tells Meta and the other platforms where to find more people like that person who is your ideal customer. The other reason is we are currently in a very saturated marketplace. Advertising is competitive and everyone is running paid ads. So when it's not like it was 10 years ago where there wasn't a whole lot of competition on Meta on social ads. Today, there's a lot of competition, which means you need to be better than your competitors, and you need to steal attention away from your competition who is also looking for that attention.
Yeah, I mean, to piggyback on the iOS 14 thing, it's funny. What are we on now? Is it 18 that's out?
Sounds about right.
I think that's 18.1 or something. We haven't stopped talking about this for 4 years, I guess, and we probably still will talk about it for 4 years more. But, essentially it means that the only things that matter are what's happening in platform and what Meta can sort of get from what's in platform. Previously, obviously, when they could sort of track you around everywhere you went on an iPhone, all that interest targeting made way more sense. So it was like, well, if you're interested in, basketball and we're selling you, basketball shoes, it's a 1-to-1 match. But now it's almost like, no, we need to actually see how an audience reacts, several times to be able to sort of build that audience more effectively than, the baseline parameters of Meta will let us do.
Even though we're talking about ads, I actually want you to explain something, because I think there's a lot of confusion about this point, right? And a lot of people hear people like us talk about things like iOS 14 and, pixels and broad and all, and it sounds like buzzwords, but I think there's a good chunk of business owners who are advertising who don't fully understand what that means. I think you and I can think about one person recently who was having a real hard time grasping that concept, a client. So when a person in the current state of advertising, where not always, but oftentimes the strategy is you go broad, and over time, Facebook will learn who is the right person. Explain that process a little bit more. Like, what's happening within Facebook so that business owners understand it?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, so to kind of reiterate the iOS 14 kind of thing is that, you used to be able to essentially lock onto a user as soon as they hit the app. And then everything they did outside of the app, but still on that iPhone, was tracked. So the websites they went to, the other apps they used, all of that sort of stuff helped build these audience profiles that you can target.
So just like further explain what you said. When you say it was all tracked, when Adam is searching tennis rackets and golf clubs and all these different things, and looking up UFC stats, all of that data from my iPhone is being captured and it's being pushed back into Meta.
Right.
So Meta knows that Adam loves golf, is not good at golf, but loves golf, plays tennis, is interested in UFC, and I can target that exactly.
Yes.
And now you can no longer do
now
that.
Yes, you can't do that unless someone clicks the button as soon as they log on for the first time that says, do you want to be tracked? Which, people aren't going to do for the most part. I do it because
I do it also.
It's a, support.
Well, and I want more relevant ads.
That's true. Yeah. People, you can allow. It's like, it actually helps. But nowadays, the best strategy for kind of targeting, especially when you don't have a lot of data already, new businesses, new products, things like that, is you sort of start very broad, kind of going, we're not really going to overlay targeting. There may be certain things you do for location or for age range based on, very obvious cues, but things like interest targeting, things like, demographic targeting or income targeting don't make a lot of sense anymore because they're missing a lot of that data that you used to be able to pull for the same thing. Now what happens is, based on the strength of your ad and the strength of the sort of action that's happening on the traffic, the sort of meta algorithm specifically really is able to kind of hone in on who's taking an action, who's making a conversion, who's your purchasing audience, who's adding to the cart, and all of these sort of metrics, who's watching your ads, like for a certain amount of time, all of these sort of things that they give you data in platform that then allow the algorithm to start putting more and more of those people. So in a way, you're building a custom audience that when it works, and it works a lot, can perform better than if you were to go in there and say, no, I think I know exactly who my customer is. Let's make it that, because you're going to miss out on a lot of potential customers. And in the long run, it's going to hurt you more than help you.
Yep. And so that leads directly into why ads are so important, because they're essentially finding the right person. And if they can't find the right person, you're going to struggle with social advertising, right? So now let's go into actually the process that we use internally, but also how people can get a better grasp on like creating ads that are actually performing and what to think through when doing this. Now, I'm going to say this, you don't need an agency to be able to pull this off. You don't need some talented guy like Ray who's behind the camera, who you can't see, who understands all this equipment. If you're a smaller business and you're on a shoestring budget, you can do all of this stuff on your iPhone. You can create really compelling ads on your iPhone. You just have to understand the mindset behind like how to create it and what you want to do. So it starts with understanding where your ad is in the funnel, right? You've got top of funnel, you've got mid funnel, and you've got bottom of funnel. At the top of funnel, you're educating people. You're building awareness with those people. Those may be people who are a good fit for you, but they don't really know, if they want to buy your product or sign up for your service. You're trying to build that pipeline of future business. In the mid funnel, you've got people who have somewhat engaged and they're in the consideration stage. They're considering whether this is a good fit for them. And at the bottom of the funnel, you've got people who are ready to go. Now they're at decision time. They're gonna make a decision. The decision's gonna be yes, it's gonna be no, or it's gonna be later, right? So talk through your mindset, Emerson, on what are the variables at play here. And if someone's creating an ad, top of funnel, what should they be thinking of? Mid funnel, what are they thinking of? Bottom of funnel, what are they thinking of?
Well, I know we sort of talked about this, previously, but it kind of comes down to market fit a lot of times of what do you need to say to someone on first view, second view, and third view, to your point of kind of how you broke it down, to kind of make sure that they have the information that's needed. And so I think of the mistake that a lot of people make sometimes is they're in a space that has maybe some competition that's doing well and they've developed a sort of product and they go like, I'm going to make ads exactly like that company's making because theirs are working. And then they sort of start running those ads and they may look gorgeous. They may be fantastic ads, but they don't have the same knowledge set that the other, they don't have the same awareness, they don't have the same credibility, they're coming in sort of cold. And so instead you kind of need a different message. You need to now put in the legwork to educate, differentiate, do all those sort of stuff, things that actually kind of help become a new brand in the space and not just rely on what someone else has done better. That being said, as you sort of get through the funnel, now you sort of know there's a difference between someone that's seen you for the very first time and someone that's made an action. So whether that's, that your audience in the second stage maybe was an abandoned cart audience, sort of what they've done on the site, the products they've looked at. It's like messaging now can be tailored very specifically to that audience. If it's someone that's been on the site a bunch of times but hasn't converted, and there's a promotional, season going on, that maybe that's going to be the hook that draws them in finally. But understanding that if someone's never heard of you, you may have some work to do, and you can't just throw, discounts and sort of, flashy images at them is an important part of the process.
And you're never going to be good at marketing, advertising, or business if you don't understand consumer behavior, right? So when you think about how people make decisions, we use words like top of funnel, mid funnel, and bottom funnel. Really what it means is like awareness, consideration, decision. And so when you think about your specific business, you have an idea of what the buyer's journey is like from a person hearing about a product or service like yours to becoming a customer, right? And this is going to change based on many variables. If you are selling automobiles, your customer probably buys a car once every 4 to 10 years. If you are selling soap, and it's a cheap price point, that a person can see you and instantly make a decision to purchase that because there's low risk, it's cheap. So the more education your product takes and needs, the longer the buyer's journey is going to be. The less education, the shorter the buyer's journey is going to be. The more expensive your product is, the longer the buyer's journey is going to be. The cheaper, the buyer's journey is lower. So when you think about that, you have to think about aligning your ads with the place the person is, right? So if you're selling something that is new to the market, maybe it's a little bit more complicated, maybe it's a service that is non-traditional, and your ads at top of funnel are going to have to focus on education. If you put a buy now 20% off, ad at the top of funnel for people who've never heard of you, you're not going to sell a whole lot of product or sign up a lot of people for your services. So at this point, you're creating ads that the goal of the ad is to educate and is to get them deeper into your funnel, not to turn them into a customer. Now, as you keep hitting them with these educational ads, first it starts with awareness. They start to learn. Then as they get deeper in the funnel, you start giving them ads that are a little bit denser, more information. Maybe you're driving them to a landing page that has a longer form video because now they're interested. We see this a lot in the financial space, right? You build awareness at the top, and as they start to pay attention, they get in and they start learning more. Now they watch the 8-minute video because they're really interested in this investment opportunity. And then at bottom of funnel, it's schedule a consultation or, whatever the call to action is. However, if you tried schedule a consultation top of funnel, it was never going to work. Or if you tried to hit them with too much information at the top of funnel, when you're just trying to build awareness, it's never going to work, which is why your ads for more complicated things need to be bite-sized, with the information you're trying to deliver, because with every ad that person consumes and stays interested, you earn more and more trust, which means they're going to pay attention more to the next piece of content you're putting in front of them.
Yeah, 100%. And I mean, that kind of segues to the different kind of formats now that I know we work within, but a lot of brands that do it independently do as well. But talk about kind of the types of ads that we're seeing now. And I know there's kind of the easy answer, but then kind of the more complex answer in terms of how to segment those things. But I'll give you the hard job of breaking that down.
Yeah, 100%. So I mean, look, you've got two primary types of ads, right? We're talking about social advertising. Google, you have text and display, but I'm talking about social advertising. You've got videos and you've got images, right? So generally, images are what people have been running since the inception of social media. Video is where it's at right now. If you're not creating video ads, you are leaving a massive opportunity on the table. If you are creating video ads, but you're not doing it enough, and you're not doing it with consistency, and you're not constantly testing and rotating in new ads and concepts, you're going to struggle. That's just the reality of how it is. Okay. So I think image ads are easier for people to understand. So let's focus on, the structure of how to create a good video ad. A good video ad has three things. It has a hook, it's got a body, and it's got a call to action. The hook is the first 3 seconds of that ad. The whole goal of the hook is to get that person to stop scrolling and pay attention to you. The body is your pitch. This is your offer. This is where you tell them what you offer. You tell them how it solves their problems. You give them what they need to know so that they understand what it is that you're offering. And the call to action is where you direct them. Here's what you need to do next. Now, going back to what we were saying about consumer behavior, your call to action should line up with what the logical next step is. Sometimes that's buy more, buy now. Sometimes it's learn more. Sometimes it's sign up for the newsletter so I can give you a buy now call to action later. So you need to think about, based on your business, we could probably do a whole episode on call to actions, but that is the structure of how you build a video ad. It's hook, engage, direct. Hook them with the first 3 seconds, engage them with the body of the video, and then direct them to where they need to go next.
And one thing, I'll jump in on this because the thing that I think people mistake a lot of times is they go, it can only be 15 seconds, or it can only be sort of 30 seconds, or whatever the time limit may be. But really, that hook part of that initial 3 seconds, if that is done well, you can take as much time as you need to deliver the other two. I mean, within reason,
100%,
obviously.
yeah.
But, I think sometimes if you're trying to cram, you say you have a very, education needed product where you need to explain a lot. You may not be able to do that in 15 seconds.
Right.
So you really need to focus on that hook part, because then you can deliver, the other two sort of stages of what that ad needs to do. And it may take you 45 seconds or a minute, but if you're at least getting people starting to watch, it will allow you to sort of get through the other part, where if you just have this really dense ad and there's no hook, you're never going to get people through that actual sort of ad. But that hook can't be more, is the most crucial thing to make sure that you're going to be able to deliver on those other two parts.
It's the most crucial thing. And we'll give you guys some pro tips. Record your hook separately from the body of your ad, and record your call to action separately, right? Because the body of your ad, even in like various things, you can tweak how you message it, but it's going to be more similar than what your hooks are, right? But your hooks are what's going to get people to stop and pay attention. So you want to record a bunch of different hooks, a bunch of 15, 20, 25. It doesn't matter, because you can switch those in editing later. You don't need a whole new production shoot, or you don't need to get your iPhone out and start recording again. Now it's just editing. You have the hooks in your, database. And if you're like, okay, this ad I think is pretty good, but for some reason people aren't paying attention, let me switch the hook out. Let's try another hook, right? Same thing with calls to action, like test different calls to action. And you can actually measure this stuff, so you need to be measuring the performance of your ad by looking at 3 very basic things. So you've got your thumb stop ratio, right? The thumb stop ratio is going to tell you how good your hooks are. And the thumb stop ratio is exactly what it sounds like. It's like, what is the ratio of people who stop their thumb from scrolling and pay attention? If you have a bad thumb stop ratio, you've got a bad hook. People aren't paying attention. If you have a good thumb stop ratio, now you've got a good hook. When you get into the body ad, now you're looking at your hold rate. And this is all stuff you can measure in platform, so Google it, YouTube it. It's very easy for you to learn how to measure this stuff. When you get into the body of the ad, now you're looking at the hold rate. What is the retention through the video? If you've got a good hold rate, that means your body of your ad is working. You've got a bad hold rate and a good hook, good thumb stop ratio. It means your hook was good, but something about the body is causing people to leave, right? And then you've got the click-through rate, which is your call to action. After people are done with the ad, do they click to go to the next step? You have a high click-through rate, you have a very good ad. You have a low click-through rate, you've got a very bad ad.
Right. Yeah. And the way you break that down is interesting because it does almost like we talked about the funnel for where people are, that's almost the funnel of the ad, right? It's you're never going to have a good click-through rate if you have a bad thumb stop ratio, and you're not going to have the click-through rate you probably want if people aren't making it through the meat of the ad, and they're not getting 50%, 75%, sort of watch rates on that ad. So they all sort of work in tandem to deliver to that CTA and that sort of click-through rate, but they kind of can't happen without the other.
Yep. Now, if you've structured the ad properly and you've done what we've said, you're going to see better quality ads, and you're going to see the performance increase, and micro improvements in various KPIs lead to macro results, right? You bump up the thumb stop ratio a couple percentage points, the whole rate a few percentage points, up the click-through rate 0.5%. Before you know it, an ad has gone from absolutely garbage to being really, really powerful, So making those minor little tweaks and edits and adjustments, it makes a big deal. And a lot of people make the mistake of, when they're producing ads, they really they create 1, 2, or 3, versions of this ad. Now you're stuck, right? Like, you're stuck, and you either don't have the budget or the will or whatever it is to be like, okay, we're going to go do it again. You're sort of say this is not working. But the truth is, you haven't given yourself enough opportunities to really see if it works, But by creating the system where you record a bunch of hooks, many variations of the body, different calls to action, now you're, piecing things together, and you're going to be able to find those winners more often than not, right? So talk to me about tone, Emerson. Like, you've got the structure of the ad, and how do you think through the idea of like the tone of the ad? Are we going funny? Are we going sarcastic? Or is this more professional? Are we being serious? What's your mindset on that? Because we see a lot of brands who think that they want to be something, we're a humorous brand, or we're this brand, or we're that brand. And I want to know how you think about it from an ad perspective.
Yep. Well, from the point of like a brand, for the instance, that doesn't quite know, right? That wants to be something but isn't quite yet, right? There are definitely brands out there. There's, in the past it was like Dollar Shave Club, or there's Old Spice still doing the thing where it's like they leaned into a very specific tone that became kind of what they wanted to be. But when you don't necessarily have that sort of, already locked in thing, I don't really think you have to lock into a tone. I don't think you have to sort of say everything needs to fit this because this is the image we want to portray. Because the one thing about, social ads is it's a pretty democratic process in terms of what's going to work and what's not going to work. So ultimately, in, my opinion, the message and what you need to accomplish in the content should dictate how that should look. And, I encourage a lot of companies to like try different versions, try different things. If you have a really good idea that someone comes up with that is funny, go with it and see if it works. But if you also have a very serious sort of angle to the product and it's very technical or scientific about what you're doing, then go with that, and sort of let the market dictate, sort of what's working. And if, some of this depends on, if you're an in-house sort of team, maybe you have someone who's just very funny, and then they're able to sort of lock into that. But ultimately, until you try, to your previous point, a lot of different things, you may not know what's working. And so in my opinion, and I don't know, you may have a difference of opinion on this, because I know we've done things different ways in terms of like, with different brands before, but I kind of like to see what people are attaching to with the brand or the product, and then kind of start to develop more of an identity based on what we know is working. But that could go in any direction and still work.
Yeah, no, I wish I disagreed with you, because it'd be fun to argue about something, but I agree wholeheartedly, and I think clarity beats cuteness, except when cuteness actually makes things clearer. Right?
Yeah.
That was pretty good.
Yeah.
I should write that down. But I think clarity is the most important thing, right? You're trying to get people to pay attention, and sometimes brands make the mistake of, they're beautiful videos in isolation, but they don't work as ads because they're too cute. And by cute, I just mean overly produced. There's all these different elements, either humor or other things that actually get in the way of the message, rather than amplify the message. But if you can lean into tone to actually make the message clearer, tie into cultural trends or whatever it is, now, that's powerful. But more often than not, brands get it wrong because they're not actually thinking about the performance of the ad. They're thinking about, how does this ad make me feel and how does it represent my brand, and all of these things that like your customers don't really care about that much, right? So this leads to the next thing that is also extremely important, which is platform authenticity. Ads have to be authentic to the platform. Too many brands make the mistake of recording ads and running the same ad across every social platform. This can work in certain cases, but the more often than not, you're going to find an ad performs on one platform and does not perform on another platform because it's not authentic to platform. Like when you look at Instagram Reels and TikTok, from a functionality standpoint, they operate very similarly. But the types of ads you can run on TikTok and the types of ads that work on Instagram are very different. With TikTok, even for big brands, iPhone, organic style ads significantly outperform high production ads. Now on Instagram Reels, you can run all, iPhone, sort of run and gun organic looking ads, but high production stuff also works really, really well on Instagram. So it's super important for you to always be thinking about the platform that you're going to run the ads on. So when you're, conceptualizing, what's my hook? What's my this? What's my that? Also be thinking about where it's going to live, because that's going to help you determine whether you need to shoot it a certain way or another way.
Yeah, it's interesting. And the other thing I'd sort of add to that, because I mean, that's exactly right. I think the easy way out a lot of times is to produce one ad and just sort of go, I'm going to throw this everywhere. But you're going to end up sort of not maximizing the actual ad dollars you're putting into. But the other thing that I would stress sort of companies to think about is where in these platforms the ads are being shown, right? Because now in something like
a story versus in feed,
Instagram or Facebook, there are a lot of different places that advertising, is in that platform. And if you just sort of put an ad into Meta and say go, it's going to throw it all over the place, but if you've developed something that's fantastic for in feed, maybe it's a static ad, it's not going to be a video, you probably don't want that showing in a story as a static, because you're going to pay extra, dollars for that impression that you don't need to pay. And so understanding how to almost create those ads for the different, in platform options. I mean, even TikTok has different versions now, TikTok Shop, and there's different things sort of going on. But that's the other sort of part of that, because there's no one size fits all, just single thing that works everywhere.
Yeah. All right, Emerson, let's wrap this up. So let's wrap it up with some of the most common mistakes that we've seen brands make with ads, either here at the agency. Let's just go with here at the agency. When a new brand comes on or we're evaluating a new brand, what are some of the most common mistakes that you see?
I think the biggest one that I'll sort of call out, and then I'll throw back to you. We can kind of ping pong this, but is I think thinking that all you need to do is put something that looks nice in front of someone. And I think it's because business owners tend to spend so much time in development of their brand, development of the business, and you can have the best looking product in the world, but you forget the fact that no one's heard of it. And so you create these things that just look incredible sometimes, but it's surface level, and you're not giving enough for someone to sink into. And we've seen that's to your funnel point. It's like you can have a really great thumb stop ratio because something looks so great, and your click-through rate's horrible, and people don't understand why that is. And it's because you went and you put all of this time into something that you wanted because it matched your brand, but didn't really think about the audience and what they need. And I guess that's probably the core of that point is, think about what the audience needs or your target, your customers need, rather than how you sort of think of the brand.
Yeah. For me, I would say the most common mistake that I see is people trying to do too much with an ad. It's just like, especially if it's a service or it's complicated, like they're trying to make the ad the entire sales pitch, right? Like, and that's not what the ad is supposed to do. The ad is supposed to think of advertising like a relay, think of advertising like a relay race where one thing hands the baton off to the next person, right? Like, so all the ad is supposed to do is hand the baton off to your website. And your website then hands it off to your sales team or your email list or whatever it is. And they hand it off to something that's going to convert you, right? But like people like try and do too much with their ads sometimes. And I'm like, all of this isn't necessary. This ad does not replace a consultation. This ad gets the consultation. What's something else?
We sort of talked about it, and so I'm kind of repeating myself, but I think it is leaning into, almost like repeating the same mistakes where you have something and you sort of just go like, no, and I know this is what I want to be, and I'm going to continue to sort of go down this path, even if results sort of aren't there. Because the best thing you can do, and I'll give you an example. We had a client once where, we did these very, very well developed ads, but we only made, I think, 3 of them. And so we launched with 3 ads, and they weren't working that great. And everyone was sort of, confused. They said, oh, we were so excited about these. They looked so great. I thought they were great, myself. We sort of went out there. They just weren't performing. So, instead we had this like backlog of different B-roll footage and all this sort of stuff that we could kind of cobble together a little bit more rough, but like, more and more content. And we put 10 ads out, the next week after we sort of stopped. And those 10 ads, even though they were much rougher, not as sort of crisp, a little bit of pushback in terms of like getting them approved to run and all that sort of stuff. But we got to try something. And we threw, as much as we could out there, and now it started to climb. And we saw those conversions through. And some of the ads that were winning were not what I would have picked in the initial run, but you don't really know unless you try. And so if you're so locked into something specific, you're never going to have the chance to let the audience sort of dictate what, they actually want to see.
Yeah. Which is the next one, right? Is you're not running enough ads. You're not running enough ads and you're not pivoting fast enough. It's all trial and error. We make our best guesses based on market research and logic and, knowledge of, the environment. But ultimately, you're going to run it and it's going to work or it's going to fail. And if you're, banking on like a handful of ads, like I promise you, however many ads you are running, you need to be running more, because it just gives you more at bats and you figure out which one's going to work. 8 out of 10 will fail. And then you will find 2 that work and then go create another 5 like the 2 that work and run those as well.
And similar to that point, similar to our earlier point about going broad with the audience, that's the same sort of tactic on the ads. The technology is now good enough to understand, like, you put 10 in there, 3 of them start to win. You don't need to worry about the other, you can start pulling them out because the focus is going to shift to where, those winners are, and it lets you build a much more robust strategy.
One more for me, bad copy, right? Bad copy doesn't always necessarily mean it's poorly written. It's just you can see sometimes when someone's spent a lot of time, put together a good ad, and it actually is a good ad, and it literally took them like 6 seconds to write the copy. They didn't even think about it. It was almost like an afterthought, but your copy is important, especially when you're running a video ad. Copy plays a role, and there should be more of a focus and emphasis on writing good copy.
Yeah, 100%. Could not agree more.
Perfect. Well, listen, take these steps and create better ads.